Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another comic book spoiler review, and I will be covering, we're back to the X-Men stuff, but this time, since I've covered many X-Men members solo content, so you get a feel of who each of the individuals are, at least for the most part. I didn't cover everyone, but at least like a good chunk of the roster, including a few of the villains. So if you want to check out those comic book reviews, it's up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. It's a little blurry, I'm sorry about this. But yeah, Cyclops, Storm, Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Magneto, Sabretooth, Mystique, Iceman, uh, Cable, Hope, Summers, Shadowcat, Gambit, Rogue, Beast, Angel. Yeah, I got a good Jean Grey. I think I said Jean Grey. Yeah, it's like a decent lineup. Oh, Domino, Deadpool. So yeah, it's like a decent lineup. So you can check those out, which I think is like a smart play if the MCU or Kevin Feige might play this way, where you would, focus certain members of the X-Men individually before you bring them all together. So that way it won't be just like as much as a lot of us care about some of the X-Men movies, the thing is you're worried too much about focusing on a particular member. Like most of it is too heavy on the Wolverine side because he's popular. Most of the movies is geared towards him being the focus and his backstory, and everybody else getting sidelined, or worry about Magneto and Professor X and everybody else gets sidelined. And it's all well and good. It's not like the TV shows never did that, but what the benefit of the TV shows had that the movies never did is the fact that you can have one movie where one of the focus is on the Wolverine side of things and his background. Another could be on the focus on Cyclops and stuff going on with him and everybody else sideline. And same thing with like Rogue or Iceman, etc., etc. But it's just like it never was shipped out that way. But anyway, moving forward, I'll be going through a lot of X-Men titles. I'll try to get them in order by the, not necessarily the year exactly, but around when they would have came up in order, up to the point of the House of X, Powers of X being the last X-Men title that I'll be doing. Well, not the last one. There's gonna be other X-Men related content I will do, comic book wise, but I'm just trying to get through like the big hallmark type of X-Men titles that we all know and love. So anyway, so Giant Size X-Men, I actually own like the first issue of this. No, not this exactly. It was something else. Some other X-Men thing that I could have sworn it was Giant Size. It's definitely like a big freaking book. Or not big like thick, but big as in vertical, tall. But yeah. So we begin the story where Professor X is going all over, different points of the world, recruiting certain members of his new batch of X-Men. And because the original X-Men is made up of Cyclops, Jean Grey, most of the time known as Marvel Girl, and most of the time known as Phoenix. She went through a lot of different names, but we just kind of just relegated her to like Jean Grey. But I think they kind of, at this point in time, kind of just go ahead with the codename with Marvel Girl and just left it, which is fine. Jean Grey I never really liked, being the host of the Phoenix, understandably. So, the codename Marvel Girl, I think, is kind of fitting now, given how Marvel's at like a particular height, so right now. Anyway, oh, and I want to point out this fact, but I mentioned this many times in my X-Men TV shows, the main of the TV shows that I reviewed regarding the X-Men, that they really treat like Professor Xavier like, like the like he's like the villain of the biggest X-Men villain ever, but it's just certain choices was kind of questionable. Same way how people like to think Iron Man's like the real villain of the MCU, given the fact that many of the Avengers battles they deal with is somehow rooted or tangentially connected to Iron Man in some fashion, like Ultron or the whole Civil War Sokovia thing, or not the Sokovia part, but tangentially, because Ultron did Sokovia, but Iron Man had a hand in creating him. But so some people theorize it's not so, and there's been many occasions that the writers here and there have retcon or rewrote certain things to show that certain moments in the past that Xavier might have used his powers to convince people to do certain things that they otherwise wouldn't have wanted to in the first place, but because he needed to go his way, he would have moved it in his way. He probably would have rather not done it, but circumstances around the situation kind of forced his mind to do it. And that's kind of bogus for the character, because he's supposed to be like the Martin Luther King of the Marvel universe, and they kind of treat him like a complete scumbag. Like in older X-Men comics, when he was recruiting the original X-Men, he deep in his recesses of his mind, he was kind of lusting after Jean Grey. Now, yes, it is Iwi, but not that I'm making any kind of excuse for it, but who of us have not had some kind of perverted part of our mind that we just keep to ourselves? I imagine if there was some kind of narration box above our head and somebody's reading it, they would be pretty disgusted with the things that we might be thinking of too. So, not that I'm, justifying it, but it's just that, writers, not even just these days, but like a good handful of years now, have pretty much like convinced themselves and then eventually convince other readers to make Professor, kind of either a creep or like, making extremely bad calls, bad leadership kind of thing. And it's like there's a way of doing it without completely throwing this character under the bus whenever it's kind of fitting. And it's not fair to the character. Anyway, it's impractical. It's probably like maybe his mental projection of himself, but because it's highly unlikely that Professor X is going through different parts of the country recruiting certain members for his new X-Men, and he's getting there traveling internationally without getting stopped by other countries. So it's had to be mental projections via cerebral or something. So we meet Nightcrawler. I already went over a Nightcrawler book, so you know what he's about. And he's getting mobbed by angry villagers who think he's a demon, which can't really blame them given the fact that his mutant abilities kind of like, because mutant powers affect people with the X gene differently, and not everybody's gonna look normal on the outside. So, and of course we know he's the son of Mystique and that red demon looking dude, forgot his doggone name, Azazel. And right as they're about to completely mob him and really stab him with a stake through the heart, just like in X2, in that museum, Professor X frees everybody. At least mentally, they're frozen. So he offers Kurt the chance to get out of the situation and uses gifts to help mutant kind and the world, extensionally, by extension. Even though, like, Kurt at this point in his life wishes he can just look normal and think Professor can possibly facilitate that, but it's like, no, can't with that. He's gonna just, it's part of you. It's like your arms and your legs. It's a part of you. You can't change it. But he needs to get out of this situation. So he, like, not that the professor wouldn't like leave him to that, but like I said, even if he wanted to initially, I'm pretty sure at some point a writer could retcon this and say like, no, how about now? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, let's go. It's possible, but I'm a glass half full kind of person. I like to think the professor wouldn't just abuse that power like that unless it's absolutely necessary. He just could be just like a very convincing man. Then he goes to Quebec, Canada, at this government facility where you assume it's like this Alpha Flight, because it's the only like kind of big, one of the big superheroes in Canada, and he recruiting Wolverine. And Wolverine is intrigued given the fact that he doesn't like the red tape and he wants to be able to, do freelance stuff, and this is his opportunity. And of course, the general is like, you can't leave, and and he just pop a club and just slashed his tie, and it's like, you can't kill me, and there's no prison that can hold me, so there's nothing you can do about it. And of course, there's been times when this general sends Alpha Flight to come collect Wolverine. Doesn't end well, but Wolverines get recruited. And this is not too long after his battle with the Hulk, which they mention in this adventure. Then he eventually goes to, this is weird, he goes to Nashville to collect Banshee, who's an Irishman. Not that there ain't Irish folk in Nashville, Tennessee, but it's just like, you would think you go to Ireland to go see a guy like this. And of course, I want to bring up about like certain members that I didn't have solo stuff to really focus on, at least, not anything substantial. I couldn't waste time like going through every body that's been tied to the X-Men, because there's way too many. But here we go about Banshee's powers really quick. Acoustic kinesis. He creates powerful sonic waves with his voice, with which he could achieve various effects, often with the assistance of psionic abilities, which functions only in unison with his psionic abilities. And of course, we've seen Banshee one time live action. Well, of course, he was in the 90s show Generation X, but we will be more familiar with him in X-Men First Class. He was in there. Sonic Scream. He has the ability to shatter solid objects with an incredibly loud and destructive sonic scream. Flight. He has the ability to fly at subsonic speeds by using his voice to propel him through the air and ride via sound waves. Sonar. Sonic Shield. He could tighten sound waves around himself or others near him, making a barrier against outside attack. Vocal disorientation. Vocal trance. Vocal unconsciousness. Just using a particular pitch to convince people to do certain things. Persuasive abilities, or making them disorient them, or just render them unconscious. Sound immunity. Banshee is unaffected by other sonic or sound type abilities. Superhuman vocal stamina. He possesses superhuman stamina in his lungs, throat, and vocal cords. He's a gifted detective, and great in unarmed combat. His interests includes American country music and playing piano, which I guess would explain why he's in Nashville, Tennessee. Expert marksman, educator, organizer, and lobbyist. Weaknesses: his vocal cords were susceptible to injury from excessive strain in his using sonic powers. He has survived normally fatal throat wounds at the cost of his sonic powers temporarily. And of course, he had the Banshee's wings. Professor X developed a harness for Banshee's X uniform. Using the harness and his sonic scream, he was able to glide on air currents. So he's picking him up here. Then he goes to Kenya, Africa, where he meets up with Storm, who's being worshipped like a goddess. While as a little kid, she was kind of like a pickpocket, but once she manifested her weather manipulating powers, the people there looked at her upon as like a god, and of course she and neither of them will be aware of what mutants are. They just go ahead and like, oh, okay, you're must be some kind of goddess. So she uses her powers to help her nation when it comes to like drought and everything's like that. And honestly, Storm is easily like one of the most powerful mutants on this earth. Give like many other powerful mutants like Magneto or Apocalypse, a run for their money, because she couldn't affect the entire globe if she really wanted to. Comes at a strain, but she's on like a peak level, especially when she got trained, and now at this current state, she can really do some freaking damage. Then you go to Russia, meet up with Colossus, and of course you get the iconic scene where he saved his young sister Ileana, who we'll know later on in her adulthood as Magic, and stops Attractor from hitting her. Professor Xavier recruits him, and of course he's worried about his worry about my mama and papa, and our tractor needs a new tractor. But then again, das Vidania, mama and papa. And then he's and of course they want him to follow his heart, because they don't want to shackle him to this one farmland. So he goes off. Then we meet John Prowstar, cool name, this Native American Apache who kind of sort of have a bit of a chip on his shoulder, not unlike Wolverine would, but now when you're reading through something like this, there are going to be certain words that by today's standards wouldn't be too PC. So just cool your jets and accept the language that comes through it. You don't have to really repeat it, but just understand where the mindset was when this was written. Of course, the reason John has a bit of a chip on his shoulder because his people got shackled to these like reservations, and they used to rain the plains and all the horrific things that was done to the Native American culture. And so he's pretty much like a young buck who wants to fight for his people and want to drive out the white man from what the land that they're supposed to have. And of course, he has no interest in helping Xavier. But once again, he's very convincing. Pretty much like, getting on his skin about like, well, John feels like he has to prove himself, like, got something to prove or something like that. So he kind of appeals to a bit of his ego. But go through Proudstar, who he gets the code name Thunderbird. But Proudstar is like a pretty cool name on its own too. Could have gone just Proudstar. But his mutant abilities, I wouldn't say they're basic, but it's kind of like not that all too different from like someone like Captain America in a way. He has superhuman strength, able to lift up to 2 tons, superhuman stamina, dense tissue, superhuman durability, superhuman respiration, superhuman speed, can run up to 35 miles per hour. That's why he can just wrestle down like a bison on foot. Experienced hand-to-hand combatant, and enhanced tracking abilities. And weapons, typical knives and rifles. Now he's one of the, part of the, well, not the original X-Men, but the second group of X-Men. But he ends up, man, he gets like the short end of the stick, because the writers at the time, now this is, mind you, this is written by Len Wein. Dang, I forgot about the art. 1 second, but I just want to mention, Dave Cockrum. They, eventually decided to kill off Proudstar. They don't agree on they don't agree exactly on the events that led to this decision, which some might say there might be a little bit of a racist undertones to it. We don't know who or what back then, so don't get your panties in a bunch. But my part of my brain is leaning towards that being the more optimum reason. We just don't know who probably facilitated that. But considering that they already have somebody like Wolverine that fits the same kind of motif, and Wolverine was a lot cooler and appealed to a lot of people after fighting the Hulk, Thunderbird got the boot. And he was in the Spider-Man and Amazing Friends, one of the people helping Spider-Man, Iceman, and Firestar. And in that, he didn't have superhuman strength and stamina. He was able to turn into animals that's depicted on a totem pole, like a bear, wolf, eagle, that kind of thing. Which I'm kind of glad they didn't. Well, I don't think about it. It could be a good idea to make that a second tier mutant ability of him, because like the whole superhuman strength and stamina is kind of basic in my opinion. I mean, like it's like how many superhuman characters have superhuman strength, durability, and speed? It varies, tangentially, but it's just like your discount Captain America. And you could just make that changeling thing into like a second tier ability. It's not unheard of. Like same thing with like Emma Frost, which is another character I did like a comic book review of on the channel. But her secondary mutation was the diamond form. So you could easily make John Proudstar have the mutant ability to change into just those 3 particular animals. It doesn't have to be something like Beast Boy, but yes, he's has the strength of when he changes to a bear, he has the same capabilities as a bear, or change to the eagle, so he can fly, or you know, be able to scope out long range distances, or you know, change to a wolf so he can better track people down. So you know, that'd be like a dope thing to have, so he can really stand out a little bit more, in my opinion. So, oh, and he also, you know, went to Japan and met up with this superhero named Shiro Yoshida, also known as Sunfire, who has the mutant ability of solar radiation manipulation. Shiro's mutant powers enable him to absorb solar and other radiation to generate the process of ionized matter, usually air, through a mental triggered unknown biochemical process so that it is converted to plasma, the superheated state of matter. Plasma is the state in which making up the sun's existence. Sunfire refers to his projecting a solar fire, hence he can sheath his body in flame. He can fly up to 150 miles per hour at max. Plasma blast. He has the ability to project the flames he generates as powerful blasts of energy. Plasma immunization. Sunfire can generate plasma temperatures which match those that can be generated by the human torch, reaching about 1 million degrees Fahrenheit at maximum level. He can also use his power in a massive blast similar to Johnny Storm's Nova Burst. However, Shiro has much more control over the area of effect, enough to where one person may feel like they having like a sun bath, compared to another person who's feeling like they're being incinerated. Heat signature sense, plasma shield, solar shielding side shield, and he's a master martial artist, learning karate and Japanese swordsmanship and kendo. So now we have our second tier of X-Men, and kudos to like the writers and artists involved in this, because now we have like it's kind of like a United Nations in a way. We got like, you know, Proud Star being like the actual American. We got a Russian guy, an African woman, a German guy, Japanese man, a Canadian, and an Irishman. And I guess you can have like Xavier being a man from England, a British man, and Cyclops would be another American by extension. But a cool vast variety of different people of walks of life coming together to make up something like the X-Men. I think that's what the X-Men should be about. It's just like a true multicultural super team that operates almost like a family in a way. And they bicker, they fight, or they help out each other. And Professor Xavier provides them with, you know, different colorful costumes, aside from, you know, Yoshida, Wolverine, and Nightcrawler, who already had their own costumes. But the others get these kind of like unstable molecule type of costumes, as he mentions, similar to that of Richard's, you know, Fantastic Four costumes, where they're very form-fitting and able to withstand certain level of punishment. So, and it's also kind of funny to have like a, you know, because they're going to be going on a mission pretty soon, and they're going to be pairing off. It's kind of funny. You having like a Japanese man and a German man pairing off together with each other, and it's kind of like, you know, is that, you know, it's like, was that intentionally or just by happenstance it just shaped out that way without even realizing it? Only two former Access powers, you know, teaming up with each other. It's kind of funny. Anyway, Xavier put these teams together on a very important mission, which turns out to be a rescue mission. In comes Cyclops, who explains what happened where the original X-Men goes to this island after Cerebro detected a massive mutant life form on the island. So they go there and they immediately get ambushed by some unseen force. And Cyclops was seemingly like the only person who made it out, who just happens to wake up on the what they call it, a stratojet. This is kind of like the proto X jet, and it's only, I guess, goes only to as far as the stratosphere. But not only his powers are not working, but his ship is already on course away from the island, and as try as might, he can't change course back to the island and go rescue his friends. So it's like 5 minutes of trying, he gives up and it's like, okay, I'm just heading back home. Goes to Xavier to try and explain what happened, and then his powers start coming back, but you know, a little bit more powerful. And so this leads to Xavier now needing to rush in recruiting some new mutants in order to rescue his older team. Hopefully, you know, they're still alive. But we gotta figure out like what happened. And so Sunfire is like, I didn't sign up to come here to come on some kind of rescue mission because something happened. Because like, what makes you think like something ain't gonna happen to us if we try to go there and try to rescue your old team? That's doesn't make me feel good. I was like, I don't like that idea. I'm out. And Cyclops like, okay, bye. I don't have time to argue because Jean is one of the people that's missing, so he's eager to get back there, and so he can try to rescue his team. So they gather together. Then of course Sunfire comes right back, which some people theorize, you know, maybe Xavier kind of manipulate him into, you know, coming back because they need him. But I like to think better of Xavier, so I just like to believe that Sunfire came to this conclusion on his own. It's like maybe you can just chalk it up to a sense of pride. You don't want to seem like a coward, or it's like he has some level of, you know, a connection to his mutant brethren or something like that. So they start giving out code names and pairing off. Colossus and Storm, Wolverine and Banshee, Sunfire and Nightcrawler, and then Cyclops and Prowlstar. And they all go in, you know, different parts. Like, you know, you take the north, I take the south, you'll take the west, and you'll take the east. That kind of thing. And they each come across different obstacles along the way. You know, Storm and Colossus deal with this kind of avalanche that seems to follow them. And of course, Colossus takes the brunt of the hits, while the rest, Storm sends flying using her wind powers, sends flying into the ocean, while Sunfire and Kurt gets attacked by these giant birds. And this is the only time you actually get to see that, you know, Kurt's teleportation powers without the Banff part. But I think after this point, moving forward, we always see the whole Banff thing. It became a staple. And of course, Sunfire, you know, burns down the birds. Banshee and Wolverine deals with these giant crabs and starts crushing them. But they look upon this giant like monolith, and they all convene onto that spot, which was never there when they landed. And I quickly thought when I was reading through this, it's like, what's the whole, well, I was about to say, like, what's the whole point of y'all pairing off away from each other like it's freaking Scooby-Doo when you're just gonna end up a few minutes later running back into each other? But then I remember about what happened to the original team where they were all together and they just totally got like ambushed. So, I guess it makes better sense to lessen the likelihood of that happening the second time around. Um, so they go inside this fortress where they find the previous team strung up on these kind of vine-like wires, and Angel comes to and screams bloody murder. It's like, why did you come back? It was all a trap. It was a trap. This thing wanted you to go seek out more mutants so it can feed off of us. Why did you come back? And then, shocker, the mutant they were looking for was this island itself called Krakoa. Yes, have you read like Jonathan Hickman's House of X, Powers of X? The island of Krakoa is kind of like their home, and it's like a living home that they used to house like many mutant kind who wants to make their home there, kind of like a extra nation. So this living creature, who was created via like atomic use, a regular island that was used for atomic testing, that all the plant life and animal life and all these kind of things kind of fused together to make one entity kind of thing. And of course, it's been like at least a couple of variations of Krakoa, but this is the first introduction to the first one. And so now the team is fighting this kind of avatar of the island. So Polaris, who's also the daughter of Magneto, Lorna Dane, who has magnetic powers herself, combining her abilities with Storm, thanks to like Cyclops' instructions, forces some kind of chain reaction in the in the center of the sun. Was like it's scientific hogwash, but they channel their powers to the center of the earth. It causes some kind of chain reaction to come flying back through the trail that they left to this island, causing it to the island to hurt in a way. And there's a massive storm brewing now. Since like the island gobbled up their plane, Iceman makes a giant ice raft, essentially. Havoc, Cyclops' brother, and Cyclops himself make some kind of use their powers to propel them away from the island, while it just shoots up into the freaking sky. How like you're holding like a slippery soap and you're squeezing it and it pops out of your hand? It's kind of like that here, and it's went to out in outer space and flies off. Now, since the massive island is gone and leaves this gaping space, the water is trying to fill that hole essentially, and it causes massive whirlpool. Our Iceman now has to make a nice dome to protect them while they're bobbing around like like bowling pins, or not bowling pins, but kind of like like those like lottery ball things. And they managed to survive all that. I didn't even bring up about like Havoc, who was also in the First Class movie, as well as the Apocalypse in the beginning. 1 second here.1 second. And he's also in a 90s TV show too. Alexander Summers. Ambient energy conversion. Havoc absorbs ambient cosmic energy into the cells of his body and processes it into plasma. This results in control over an extremely powerful sort of destructive force. At times, he is not entirely able to control this ability, which sometimes make him a danger to those around him unless he wears a special containment suit to assist him. Havoc's body is constantly in the process of absorbing cosmic radiation. When each of his body's power storage cells enclaves reaches its capacity, excess cosmic energy is thereafter absorbed and immediately re-emitted in negligible quantities. Upon the total expenditure of all his available energy, it takes Havoc's body about 16.5 hours to recharge to its peak level unless he absorbs a large amount of energy at once. The act of concentration involving and releasing his energy in anything other than an omnidirectional wave is physically exhausting for Havoc if he continues it over an extended period of time. He can absorb cosmic energies from his environment, such as starlight, X-rays, and gamma radiation, and store them within his body's cells, metabolizing the energy in order to generate plasma wave discharges that superheat and disintegrate objects or create concussion bursts by violently displacing air molecules in his path. His ability to absorb energy is so great that he was able to survive being dropped into a large star and use its energy to augment his powers to the point where he was able to defeat his immensely powerful brother Vulcan, also a Summers brother, but born in space. He was also able to overpower Magneto using volcanic energy and blast the Hulk unconscious. Sauron admitted that he was potentially stronger than his brother Cyclops. Energy absorption, energy self-sustenance, heat immunity, radiation immunity, plasma generation, flight. Havoc is well educated in geographical sciences and has trained in martial arts by Wolverine. Weaknesses: uncontrolled ambient energy conversion, genetic flaw, not able to hurt any relative of his that also have mutant powers. Most of Havoc's costumes act as containment suit and constantly monitor his energy output. Fun fact, Alex greatly dislikes cauliflower. His favorite movie is West Side Story, and he's fond of Stephen King books. Each of the Summer brothers have a signature energy color. Scott has red, Alex has blue, and Gabriel has yellow. So there's a little fun fact about Havoc. Now we're going to another story, because obviously they ain't keeping like the whole entire 13 characters on this X-Men team. Some went off, because if you wonder where Beast was, it's not too long after he got the whole blue fur thing and he went off to join the Avengers, so he's not part of the team at that, at that juncture. And then also Prowlstar gets killed off in another adventure, and some just went off their separate ways. Like, some probably went back to Japan. So we get like our very well-known roster of the 90s X-Men people. Anyway, we on another adventure where the Sentinel starts systematically attacking mutants. This is probably the first time they actually have to deal with somebody like the Sentinels. So first we see Polaris gets, kidnapped, during which Alex is having problems with his powers, and Cyclops and the X-Men are trying to help him with that. They're in like I think Egypt maybe, and they're trying to help him, but things get restless when like the officers there are trying to subdue him, but Havoc ends up running away. Just then, they get worried about Sentinels attacking, and Polaris is like missing. So Iceman, who's dating her at that time, is like beside himself. So he and Beast go back to America to try to figure out what clues they could pick up on and see where she might have been taken. While Cyclops and Jean and Angel are still tracking down Alex, who eventually gets picked up by a Sentinel themselves. During which we figure out who was responsible and start sending out these Sentinels. It was Larry Trask, the son of Boulevard Trask, who was the inventor of the Sentinel program. Him and his buddy, who's like a judge, who's like looking after him after Boulevard died, and they plan on sending out these Sentinels to gather up these mutants to force them to stand trial, kind of situation. But it's all just mutant hate. And so Sentinels spring up and start attacking Iceman and Beast, who Iceman had to make the sacrifice and get captured so Beast can make an escape, so he can team up with Cyclops and Jean later to try to mount a rescue mission. And you see one by one, it's like different mutants, good and bad, getting attacked and captured. They try to come after Magneto, but it turns out to be a robot, and Mesmero, who's like his henchman at the time, is like was totally shocked the fact that, oh, Magneto's not even here. I've been working for this robot this whole doggone time, who knows how long, and he gets captured. Most of the Brotherhood gets captured. Even certain people, just strangers who happen to be detected as being get captured. This is like a widespread, like systematic capturing. And then later on gonna be like elimination. And it turns out, and this is where like Havoc gets his costume, that he started to assist Larry Trask in hopes to keep like Lorna safe. And it's his only reason. Of course, Iceman is, because he has a thing for her too, so it's kind of like a love triangle situation going on. But and if you're wondering, like isn't like Cyclops, isn't Iceman, he's probably technically bisexual by if you want to label it, because for the longest time Iceman has been kind of like a playboy kind of situation, just like a hopeless romantic, and not unlike somebody like Nightcrawler. But some point around the mid 2000s, some writer just like haphazardly just like, it was around the time when like some kind of timey-wimey BS where like the Young Avengers, not Young Avengers, younger X-Men were time travel from the past into the present day, seeing all what they end up turning into and all the crap they're still dealing with and blah blah blah. I went over that when I was covering a Jean Grey comic, and some writer decided to, it's very like I don't know why, it's just like a very cheap way to probably gain more readers maybe, or shock value or something like that. It's just very haphazardly, and just like, I don't know, there's no reason for this, but it's have like Jean read his mind. It's like having like not read his mind before, But it's like, oh my god, Bobby, are you gay? And he's like, pulls like an ice wall between them. And it's like, in shame. And it's like, A, you outed him, and B, that's like a shitty way of trying to have a character discover his like true feelings. It's kind of, there's no reason even to put that in there. You just did it just because you just did it. It's no organic way of going about it that you even attempted to try. It's not like I wouldn't be opposed of a certain character discovering themselves or whatever like that, but this guy, they did the same thing with like John Kent Superman, same thing with Tim Drake Robin. It's very like haphazard, but I think this is a little bit more egregious. Like, was no thought put into it. It just did it. It bugs me. Okay, it's like just like a cheap way of trying to garner readers or something. Instead of probably in my opinion, just make a new character and just have them like figure things out or something. That is just cheap, very cheap. It just bugs me. Anyway, this is during a time when none of that was like a whole issue. Anyway, but he's mad at Havoc for having betrayed them. But he needed something to help with his powers, because he's gonna be a danger to everybody, and he wants to help his the girl that he likes. I don't know if they are official, but he also likes her. But then the Sentinels ends up turning on them, and then they get put up into these containment units and suspended, not necessarily suspended animation. They can still see and is privy to what's going on. They just ain't mobile. Then the judge had to snap Larry out of it, because he's like really going hard. It's like sending orders to eradicate them. It's like then rip off this medallion that his father gave him, and it turns out that because like he's gonna look, we gotta put them on trial. We're not gonna sit there and just commit utter genocide with no probable cause. Was never be no probable cause, but it's like this is a judge and like being raised about the law and everything like that. Even though he's still kind of like a mutant hater, but he still believe in like the procedure of law and order. Even though you're systematically kidnapping people, but sure. But then realize Larry's going completely psycho at this point, and then once this medallion goes off, it turns out it was keeping his mutant gene undetected. Larry is a mutant, turns out, and his father knew because he predicted, because he's a precog, he predicted the exact moment as a young kid when his mother would die. So in order to protect his son, and it's probably facilitated his hatred for mutants, Boulevard decided to create this medallion to have, so that way it kind of blocks the Sentinel's mutant detection systems. But now that it's off, it goes by the very last order that he gave, and they're sticking to it, which is capture and kill all the mutants. So now they sticking Larry in a containment unit, but they leaving the judge alone, given the fact that he's still human. They won't hurt him, but they don't have to follow any of his orders at all. So now most of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are getting captured, except for Quicksilver, Wanda, and Toad, who bump into Cyclops, Jean, and Angel. Angel gets captured. They follow along after everybody's getting captured, and they, Scott comes up with an idea of switching costumes with them in order to get the jump on one of the Sentinels and knock it out. So the judge ends up releasing Havoc in order to try to, thanks to like Larry, pointing him to this kind of like retro ray gun thing, and pointed at Havoc because he used it to try to manipulate Havoc, via his powers in order to break him loose. So the judge ends up blocking an attack from that was aiming at Cyclops because he realized things are going way too far, and instructed Cyclops to use logic. They're machines based on logic. It's kind of like that old trope where it's like you can confuse and destroy or cause like a robot to self-destruct if you hit them with like a logic that kind of like kind of like a paradoxical logic that makes sense but also make no sense because it's kind of like a snake eating each other kind of situation. And it's like the episode in the 90s X-Men episode where it's like the Sentinels reason that all humanity, in order to destroy all mutants, they gotta also destroy humanity, because here Cyclops pointed out that your job is to protect humanity, but it's humanity that birth humans in the is humanity that births mutants in the first place. So that means you will have to destroy all humanity. But in a TV show, they did a smarter way there. The fact that, well, I'll have to eradicate all human life in order to make sure that there's no more mutants. That's mostly how it usually will go. Here, they decide, okay, we'll just fly off into the sun and destroy ourselves, which I'm not sure I'm okay with. I like it the way it's played better in other iterations where they just like, okay, we'll just destroy all humanity just to prevent any more future mutants. And Havoc, ends up like, trying to destroy himself at this breaker box thing in order to stop himself from like utterly destroying everybody in this area. But this kind of stops the whole Sentinel, systematic takedown of mutant kind. Then we get these little mini adventures here. And it's kind of like a retro retelling of the this second group of X-Men, where Wolverine is trying to teach, Prowlstar, Sunfire, Colossus, Storm, and Nightcrawler about teamwork. And he says, pretty much making the story about like, hey, winning a team. Oh, well, like, one of us has to, Chuck only wants the best of the best. So we're going to have to like fight each other and see who's the weakest link and off them. And of course, this kind of incites a like a Fight Club kind of situation, but most of them are not with hurting another of them. But Sunfire and Prowlstar are just like, okay, well, let's just go after you then, Wolverine. And so like they ends up causing like a fight. Then Storm gets into it and starts causing like a electrical surge in the danger room. Of course, Wolverine will have to unsheath his claws because, as he points out to Prowlstar, metal bones, not a good idea to pop my claws. So they fight. Then Banshee shows up and it's like, what the heck are y'all doing? And then Wolverine points out like, oh yeah, I made all that crap up. Because this is about teamwork and we need to learn each other's skills and weaknesses, because when we're in the thick of it, we need to know who has each other's back. Because as he points out, like, the Fantastic Four are a team because they got their powers at the same time. We got the Avengers, who one of them was literally like a Norse god, and they team up, to fight like those big, battles, hugely worldly threats, things like that. We're just kind of like a motley crew, and we need to be able to bounce off each other quick, because this ain't a game. So I mean, I kind of like this. but it's like I know there was like a retelling of like the giant size X-Men story with them battling like the Krakoa Island, but I wanted to just go with like the original telling of it. But I like the design, like the art here, better than I did with like the first Avenger. Then we got one more story where it's like Power Star is learning about like working with the X-Men team, and everybody's trying to find a place to see if they belong here at all. And so uh Cyclops is like commanding a training session, and one where they use their powers and the other where they try unarmed combat. And he instructs, okay, Prostar, Aurora, you guys, go ahead and like just duke it out. And Prostar is like, I guess you can some might view it as, oh, that's so misogynistic or whatever, or like, oh, he's such an arrogant woo woo. But it's like you can say he has some kind of honor code where he does not like the, because he's like, I don't want to hit a girl. Maybe it's the whole girl part is part will be triggering to some people, but it's like, and then she just like does like a roundhouse kick at his ass. It's like, I'm no girl, but cool moment for Aurora, but it's just like I can see it. Like guys are raised to not hit women, and it's like some take it really to heart with that. It's like I don't like like the whole idea of hitting a woman. But she then like use her cape to like subdue him, but he narrates in his mind, it's like, I might be, glued to this thing, but so is she. So it's kind of like a tug of war thing. He managed to, subdue her. And like, Wolverine's like, stop, Psych, you gotta stop this, kind of thing. And Psych, I was like, hold on, let's see what's gonna happen. How's she gonna get out of this? And she, ultimately taps out, and Wolverine goes in to help her up. Training session is over, and Wolverine goes to talk with Xavier about this whole situation. And it's kind of funny, like you have like, you rarely see this, if at all, but I noticed that Wolverine's wearing like a Canadian flag shirt, and it's like, wow, this is the, because you rarely remember that he's Canadian, and it's like he doesn't really like have any kind of Canadian show off any kind of Canadian pride like that. It's kind of funny. I was like, oh, yeah, he is. Every once in a while, I tend to forget that he's Canadian. But he's talking with Chuck about like the whole situation where, I have to step in because a second later it's gonna, blood was gonna be drawn in a few minutes, so I had to step in. And Xavier also had to point out that, yeah, while it's good to have you there to, keep things from getting too out of hand, you also got to remember that you kind of undermined Scott, and he needs your trust so that way he can trust him in his own leadership. Because if he can't trust his own teammates to trust him, he starts second guessing himself, and that's not good, in terms of working on a team. And of course, Prostar is overhearing this, and he starts snooping around, and he sees like Cyclops commune with the psychic form of Jean, where she might be elsewhere. He thought it was kind of weird. It's like, some dude making out with a ghost. Then he goes to Wolverine's room, where Wolverine is secretly meditating in another room. I guess he managed to finish his conversation with Chuck. And he remains unbothered. He knows he's there, but he's not gonna, jump out and say anything. But Prostar notices his room is just like like a trash heap, just beer cans all over the ground. But then he took a minute and think like, he may seem like a slob, but this is strategically placed. So anybody trying to come in, they can easily make noise for him to pick up on and snag an intruder. So he hops over everything and doesn't touch anything because he really theorized that a man like this will probably have things like this memorized in a place where he left it. If it's moved out of place, he will know. So he looks through all these pictures and see what's going on, just to get a feel of this guy and the people that he's associating with. Then he jumps down to Aurora's room, where he bumps into a second projection of Xavier, and he mentions about, like, you know, Aurora thinking about not staying here and trying to find a place, you know, because not all of them are going to end up staying, but they need a reason to stay. So Proudstar ends up giving Storm like a cactus and a note, pretty much apologizing what happened at the danger room and him taking probably things a little bit too far, and giving her, like, you know, her first plant, because she, you know, more often than not have like a room or eventually a greenhouse in some cases of plants where she can, like, you know, nurture everything, and it's probably the first plant she has that she can nurture. It's like prickly on the outside, but it's sweetness on the inside, kind of thing. I love the art in this. It's probably like the best art, maybe because it's like kind of early 2000s kind of art. But like I said, 90s and early 2000s art is probably my favorite, you know, art renditions of comics. You know, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like gives me that feel as a kid when I'm reading comics for the first time. But yeah, that's pretty much Giant Size X-Men. The first adventure is probably the best one. Everything else seems like either a retro retelling or just some kind of extra story tagged on. The Sentinel adventures, you know, is all right, but yeah, like this first adventure with Xavier recruiting all these different members to form like it's kind of like, you know, like the second tier X-Men, but I guess the third tier will be the one that we know from like the 90s, where it's like half of them, half of both parts, become like the main roster. But yeah, the next X-Men story that I will be tackling for the new review, I think the next one I want to do is a more, well, not modern, but it's like more of the 90s X-Men adventure. Because I want to do at least one, and it's not like a standard, you know, event, but Professor Xavier and the X-Men story. Then after that will be like Onslaught. That's where we get the typical, you know, high-profile X-Men stories. I also want to let you guys know I will be tackling, you know, Elseworld type of universe X-Men stories, like Ultimate X-Men from the Ultimate Universe, X-Men Noir from the Noir Universe. Yeah, I want to tackle those two. Then, of course, the other X-Men variant teams like X-Factor, X-Force, those I will get to as well. I think I'll do it before the the final story of House of X and Powers of X. But look forward to those pretty soon. I will see you guys Uh, later on tonight, we're playing some more Overwatch 2 with like the healers, all healers. Oops, all healers, and yeah. And then later on this week, I will be covering the Incredibles movies for the movie reviews for Thanksgiving movie month for like family oriented films. Anyway, I will see you all soon. Take care. Have a great weekend. Peace.